Why the Internet Loves Buster Keaton, by Don McHoull. I think that's how you say it. Interesting. That name, by the way, seems to be familiar. I just don't know why. But that name is familiar to me. Buster Keaton. I have no idea, though. But I think I've heard this name somewhere before. Anyways, we'll go in. Also, please consider liking, subscribing. I appreciate your support. We'll go in.
The silent comedian Buster Keaton seems like an unlikely candidate for online fame. For one thing, he died in 1966, when the earliest version of the internet was just being proposed. And yet Keaton is surprisingly popular online. His most famous stunt, where a heavy wall falls...
Diabolical. I would be worried. I don't know. To be fair, again, I've heard this name before, but I just can't, like, place it.
...around him has been viewed tens of millions of times on various platforms. It's impossible to know exactly how many times Keaton has been viewed online, but I can safely say it's over 1 billion. That's the view total for the posts that you see on screen now, and this is just the tip of the Keaton iceberg, only a small selection of the many thousands of posts you can find across the internet. In the broader context of the internet, 1 billion views is pretty niche. For someone like BTS, it would be a rounding error. But objectively...
But, I mean, yes, 1 billion views isn't, like, huge. Yeah, okay. However, you also have to admit that this is, obviously, a silent actor. He's, like, the second most famous silent actor. Yeah, so that's the thing, right? That adds to it, which makes this very special. And also, like, the time, right? Why care really about, like, an actor from, like already, like, far before the internet, really? It's just a bit interesting. But then again, just like clothes can become modern again, and other trends can become modern again, I don't see why this can't happen with actors or music or whatever.
1 billion is still a huge number. Creating work that reaches that many people is no easy feat. What is even more amazing is to make something that is still being widely seen over 100 years later. Consider our current pop culture. How much of it will still be reaching a mass audience in 2123? Which of these faces will still be widely recognizable? There's a natural tendency to assume that the popular works of our age will endure. To imagine some kind of a Ready Player One future where yet-to-be-born generations are obsessed with the same things that we are. But I think the lesson from history is that most things that are famous and popular will eventually fade into obscurity.
Bro, I can't live in a world where people are gonna ask when I'm like 80, where kids are gonna ask what a DS is. They already ask what a DS is. I'm in pain, suffering. It's horrible. It's horrible. Help. But that is very true. That is very true. To be fair, we do have the advantage of being able to preserve things much more easily than previous times. However, we have to also admit that the more we preserve something, the worse in quality it gets. Which is really interesting. Like, right, if you preserve something, and you properly preserve it, especially in modern times, it should actually get better in quality. Not worse. But it gets worse. More pixelated, weird aspect ratios, audio issues. Interesting.
Looking back 100 years can be helpful. A list of the best-selling novels of the 1920s is full of books that few people alive today will have read, like The Man of the Forest, Black Oxen, and Soundings. The same is true of the cinema of the 1920s. Movies like The Covered Wagon and The Big Parade sold millions of tickets during that decade, but that hasn't translated into a lasting pop culture footprint. Keaton, on the other hand, is still being seen by millions of people online. Why is that? I think there are a few reasons. The first reason Keaton is so suited to today's internet is the way people consume content online.
What was he doing to this horse? Hold up! Wait a minute! What the fuck? Hold up.
Why is that? I think there are a few reasons. The first reason Keaton
What's she doing? Why showing me this? What is she doing? What is she? What is happening here? What is happening here? She's milking the horse. Help. Help. Not just that, I think you can get better at throwing your stuff in a pile, but if you random it, you're not gonna organize it well, the pile will crumble. Obviously, yeah, but due to the internet, preserving something is more easy. However, unless you're Nintendo, then preserving your stuff is incredibly difficult because it gets taken down. But overall, it should technically be easier.
is so suited to today's internet is the way people consume content online. One study found that 85% of views on Facebook are done without sound, which is why the internet is so full of videos like this, images with text on top of them. There may be narration, but it's not essential to understand what is going on. It's easy to draw a parallel to the media consumption habits of people a century ago, when the most popular medium was one driven by visuals and text. Today, much of the time, the smartphone is essentially used as a new silent screen. Critic Amanda Hess explored this idea in an essay in the
True, not wrong. I oftentimes also watch videos if there's without sound. That oftentimes happens too, though to be fair, most of I do consume with sound. If there's sound, I will check if there's sound. If there's no sound, that's fine too, I guess.
New York Times. She notes how many things that are popular on social media, cute animals, babies, spectacular feats, were also popular subjects in the earliest days of cinema. Social media has cultivated its own mute visual culture, she writes. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I guess because like stunts and stuff, watching animals and stuff is like, and just, yeah, I think like is overall one of the easiest forms of entertainment you could get. So I don't really see the issue. It's the easiest form of entertainment that you could get.
Are designed to encourage endless scrolling, and that boosts videos that are made to catch the viewer's eye without offending her ear with grating bursts of noise. She notes how clips that don't rely on sound do well online because they can be consumed anywhere and aren't limited by language barriers. A good example of this is Kabe Lame, the most followed user on TikTok.
Why? Yeah, funny. Interestingly enough, Kabe Lame has been bleeding followers though because, well, he's not uploading as much as he used to, but also the format is just like people grew tired of the format. Also, the burger's being cut with a saw. Interesting.
The Senegalese-born Italian content creator has racked up over 160 million followers and 2 billion likes with his brand of wordless comedy. Just like the silent comedians, avoiding the constraint of language gives his work a more universal appeal. Because Keaton can make the audience laugh without saying a word, his comedy also isn't limited by language. Just look at the audience metrics for this Keaton compilation video I made.
Interesting. Germany's pretty high up. So is Russia.
The views come from all over the world. As it was in the silent era, Keaton's work is still being enjoyed by audiences across the globe. A second factor for Keaton's popularity is what you might call his GIF ability. By that I mean his films are rich with compelling visual moments that are perfect for online consumption. As long as the internet has been around, Keaton has had a presence on it. If you look at the Buster Keaton Society's website from 1998, his fans were already excited about the potential for the new medium. But it took another decade or so for Keaton to really take off online, with the rise of the GIF. As the internet shifted from desktop PCs to smartphones, Keaton GIFs spread across platforms like Tumblr and Reddit.
I think what probably also adds to it is the stunts. From what I've seen, the stunts look fun to look at. I could see how that also adds to the enjoyment.
An internet of moving images could finally capture some of the qualities that had made Keaton a star. That was my game.
They just make a cup out of noodles? Crazy.
way into Keaton. At some point I noticed GIFs that people had made from silent movies, and I was struck by how perfectly the content fit the format. So I started making my own GIFs, and then I made a Twitter account and a subreddit where I post them. I feel like the GIF is a very accessible way for people to discover and engage with silent cinema. Popular Keaton GIFs on Reddit will generate hundreds of comments. There aren't that many places on the internet where you're going to see more people involved in a discussion about silent film. Over the years, I've made GIFs from all kinds of silent movies, but none provide better source material than Keaton's. One 20-minute Keaton short can produce many GIF-worthy moments. These GIFs are all from 1 week, the first short film Keaton released. I think an interesting thing about the internet is the way that it allows people to pluck individual moments out of over a century of pop culture and put them in a new context. A scene
True, right? Especially through memes. That how many movies have gotten a little bit of their shine through just memes or GIFs? That's very true. Yeah. You know, something I find interesting, both Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, and especially Lon Chaney, weren't considered that attractive looking, but were super popular at the time. Because, I guess, you know, first of all, being in a movie is generally pretty much a boost of popularity. I mean, they're not unattractive people, really. I wouldn't say that they're not, like, super attractive, but they're also not unattractive. Also, I guess if you're entertaining, then that really doesn't matter all that much.
from an obscure 1930s cartoon can become a popular meme.
Somebody touch my spaghetti! Somebody touch my spaghetti!
A pop song from the 1950s can be,
Especially considering that we have people like Rachel Zegler that are unattractive, yet are able to star in big budget movies.
remixed into the soundtrack for thousands of TikToks.
Put your head on my...
Maybe one of the best examples is the 1943 musical Stormy Weather. 20 years ago, if you watched the movie and were blown away by this famous Nicholas Brothers dance routine, there wasn't really any easy way to share it with other people. Maybe if you had a copy of the movie on VHS, you could fast forward to this scene and show it to a friend, but that's obviously not the most effective way to reach a lot of people. Now we live in a time when anyone can clip that scene out of the movie and post it on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram. Other than The Wizard of Oz,
Very true, very true. Mr. Keaton looked really rough when he got older. Well, some people age like wine, some people age like milk, and some people also age like a plum. They look good for the majority of their life, and then suddenly they start to get all wrinkly.
the potential audience for an 80-year-old musical is probably pretty limited. But this one scene has been viewed tens of millions of times online. A similar thing is at work with Keaton's films. Are 10 million people going to sit down and watch a 100-year-old movie? It's unlikely, but individual moments from these movies are able to break out and find a big audience on their own. In a world of short-form video content, you need a compelling visual to grab people's attention, and Keaton was a master at creating just such moments.
Well, I wouldn't say, like, the thing is with the way silent movies are made, it is it's a little easier, actually it might be a lot easier, to pick out individual scenes and use them for short form content. I don't think, like, that he specifically cultivated it for that, right? Nobody could have seen coming that TikTok would become a thing, or YouTube Shorts. But overall, I think because they're silent movies and they need to be entertaining and convey a story without speech, they are easier to be used for short form content.
Another thing that draws people to Keaton is how real his work is. He famously did his own stunts, risking his life for the sake of his movies. The fact that he fractured his neck while performing a stunt has become part of his online legend. In an age of CGI, I think there is an appetite to see people do dangerous things for real. Tom Cruise has solidified his position as one of Hollywood's last true megastars by embracing a Keaton-esque commitment to performing his own stunts in movies. Stunts are a proven, if sometimes risky, way to get attention online. And when you're dealing with stunts that are 90 or 100 years old, there's an added assurance of authenticity. With the limited visual effects that were available in the 1920s, there was no convincing way to fake most of the things.
To be fair, that's unfortunately a general thing when I look at it. That's unfortunately very much a general thing that stunts are no longer done by actual actors. Not only stunts, even fighting scenes are not really done by the actors anymore, right? There's a lot of cut footage of like behind the scenes footage for Revenge of the Sith, where the fights they had, where there's fights they have used, those weren't done by the both actors for Anakin and Obi-Wan. Those weren't done for by them. So yeah, even for fights, they're not really doing that. That movie, The General, he just showed is becoming 100 years this becoming 100 this year. Crazy.
Things that Keaton did. His famous shot from The General, in which a real train crashes from a flaming bridge into a river, continues to amaze people almost a century later. Mr. Beast, YouTube's biggest star, showed that as much as popular taste may have changed since the silent era, people were still drawn to the spectacle of a crashing train. Obviously, Mr. Beast isn't making silent comedies like Buster Keaton. But one shared trait between the two of them is a drive to create something spectacular for the viewer. One of my Twitter followers once speculated that Keaton could have been a YouTube star if he were alive today. And considering
Yeah, he probably would. With this kind of stuff, he probably would. Also, look at Casey Neistat. Interesting. I haven't seen that name in a while. Interestingly enough, to be fair, most CGI looks bad. I'm gonna say this. Most modern CGI looks bad to begin with. Like, it really doesn't look all that good. There's like rare situations where I think a movie has pretty much perfect CGI, but most of the time, like, you can think, for example, of what you want of the Transformers movies, right? But the CGI in those movies is pretty damn good. Like, the CGI in the first and the second movie are pretty darn impressive. No denial about that. I feel like overall, movies that use a little CGI and mostly just practical effects seem to look a lot better, right? Lord of the Rings is usually a big one that gets brought up.
he's kind of an expert in that area, I would have to agree. On one level, it seems impossible that someone exactly like Keaton could exist today. Child labor laws, thankfully, make it unlikely that a person could spend their early years performing roughhouse vaudeville comedy, even if vaudeville still existed. But if you could take the Keaton of 1923 and transport him 100 years into the future, I think he'd be a natural for online success. On the one hand, you have his ability and willingness to do dangerous stunts. When you add in his genius for visual comedy, it would make for a powerful combination.
I did not see that coming. I did not see that coming. I did not see that coming. Buster Keaton was nicknamed the Great Stone Face because he always had that face in every movie. Interesting. That I did not see that coming.
The fact that he already has a lot of devoted admirers online probably wouldn't hurt either. I think a final reason why Keaton is so popular online is because the internet has made it easy for people to share their enthusiasm for his work.
Holy shit, that's crazy!
50 years ago, if you were a Keaton fan,
I really can't take XQC's reactions to things in general. It's a really serious at all. Lord of the Rings did so much more work to look good. There's more team, more time, more recorrections. Like I said, it also used a lot more practical effects than CGI. A lot of that movie really isn't CGI. And then you have The Hobbit, which is like CGI slop.
your capacity to tell other people about it was limited to those around you. Reaching a mass audience was impossible for most people, unless you had a show on television like Orson Welles.
He was, as we're now beginning to realize, the greatest of all the clowns in the history of the cinema.
Now anyone can have that power.
Now, you probably don't watch silent movies. I don't watch silent movies, but Buster Keaton silent movies are a little bit different.
How did Buster Keaton do all that stuff?
Connaissez-vous Buster Keaton?
Buster Keaton.
Buster Keaton.
Buster Keaton.
Hi, Buster Keaton.
Man. Buster Keaton. This man didn't care.
There was a time when Keaton's movies were difficult for the average person to watch. Now they're easily available on YouTube. If you hear someone talking about Keaton, it's easy to seek out his work. I find it interesting to compare the online presence of Buster Keaton with that of his contemporary Charlie Chaplin. Both have hundreds of millions of views online, but there is a key difference between them. Chaplin was much richer than Keaton, and he left behind an estate that actively controls his image and promotes his work.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. You know about the first movie in mugs? That the production filled the entire room with different mugs just to fit what looks good for the scene? That's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy, considering all the movies are free to watch now, being in public domain. Interesting.
Chaplin's estate runs accounts with more than 6 million followers, perhaps the most of any celebrity born in the 19th century. Keaton, by contrast, has no official online...
Yeah, small Instagram account, an okay-ish Facebook account, small TikTok account, yeah, and also in Russian. Interesting.
...presence. Instead, he is represented by a dedicated fan base and groups like the Buster Keaton Society. There are people making Keaton art. There are people making fan edits on TikTok.
And even having crushes on him. It would seem very interesting. Well, I'm not surprised by crushes. He really, he isn't a bad looking dude at all.
There are people making highly influential video essays about him.
And that brings us to the last thing about Buster Keaton, and his most famous rule. Never fake a gag.
And of course, there are a lot of people making Keaton GIFs. Then there's what I would call the history picks factor. There's a bunch of big social media accounts that have built audiences by finding vintage content that they think has the potential to go viral. Keaton's work.
The original Michelin Man looks like straight out of a nightmare. Oh my goodness.
With its combination of largely being in the public domain while still being able to rack up millions of views, has caught the attention of these types of accounts. Just from my own Twitter account, the Keaton effect is plain to see. It's always easy to spot his birthday when I look at the analytics. One of the strangest things I found while doing research for this video was his Facebook page for what seems to be an app and e-commerce site based in India. Their social media strategy seems to revolve around posting clips from Keaton and Chaplin movies, getting millions of views, and then trying to redirect some of that traffic to their website. Whether people are sharing Keaton's work because they're fans, or they're just looking to farm engagement, the end result is millions of views. Most might just scroll on to the next piece of content, but it only takes a small percentage of those millions of viewers to create a new generation of Keaton fans. Currently, we're living through something of a Keaton renaissance. There's a recent documentary about him.
The Great Buster Celebration, 94% on the tomato meter, 86% audience score rating, an hour and 42 minutes. Interesting. Back in 2018, I guess people nowadays find him attractive. That could also be to the fact that men back in the Dark Ages looked a lot more masculine than what we have today, right? sharper jaws, more adult, you know. I've noticed that too.
Last year, 2 major books were published about his life and work. The directors of...
Interesting. Even books. Wait, there's actual references in John Wick? That's funny. That's funny. Even Mission Impossible.
Major Hollywood film franchises cite him as an influence and pay tribute to him on screen. 2 different biopic projects have been announced, with Rami Malek set to play him. I think Keaton's on...
As long as they don't turn out the way the last one I've watched.
Online popularity helped to lay the groundwork for this. There are millions of people out there who are at least somewhat familiar with him thanks to the internet. What has become this video essay was originally a presentation I gave at the annual convention of the Buster Keaton Society. The theme of that presentation was the next stage, in keeping with the overall theme of the convention. I looked at the various ways that people had discovered Keaton over the years. Before he even made a movie, Keaton was well known as a vaudeville star. Hundreds of thousands of people would have seen him perform on stage. Then, through the movies, he was seen by millions more around the world. After his career slowed, he eventually found a new generation of fans through television. Television still has the power to introduce Keaton to new audiences. But overall, the cultural influence of television is in decline, and the space it has for silent movies is pretty limited.
Yeah, to be fair, television is also dying because... To be fair, I think Western media in general has taken a great hit. I wonder why. Women must love his rough voice, which he also had. Interesting.
Today, I think the internet has replaced television as the most likely place for people to discover Keaton, and in many ways, it is more suited to that role. For one thing, the internet is more democratic. In the 1950s, only a small number of people would have had the power to showcase Keaton to a large audience, whether by broadcasting one of his movies or booking him as a guest on a variety show. But today, anyone with a TikTok account can take a clip from a Buster Keaton movie, add suitable music, and potentially get 1 million views. A lot of what we view online is driven by algorithms. While there can be big downsides to that, it also creates space for types of content that would have struggled to find a space on television. On TikTok, videos about knitting...
I mean, yeah, it would be very much unlikely for silent movies to have any real chance in modern television. That would struggle quite a bit. Knitting. 3.8 billion views on TikTok. Well, makes sense. Charlie Chaplin had a high-pitched voice like a British person. I know what Charlie Chaplin sounds like, I'm pretty sure.
Have over 4 billion views. On YouTube, people have built good-sized audiences by making videos about local transit. The same is true with Keaton. The YouTube algorithm has recommended my Keaton stunts video over 100 million times. It's hard to imagine television coming anywhere close to that kind of push, unless it aired clips of Keaton during the Super Bowl. What would Keaton himself make of all this? I'd like to think he'd be happy that people were still enjoying his work.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So when sound came to movies, the actors were doing voice reveals. True. Voice reveals.
Work a century later. Maybe a bit surprised, too. Keaton lived to see many of the biggest films of the silent era lost and forgotten, treated like a disposable afterthought by the studios. Keaton's films could have become as ephemeral as his stage performances, living on only in the memories of audience members, until at last becoming totally forgotten. Yet that didn't happen.
But yeah, it's crazy. 75% of films made during the silent era are now lost. There are fragments from a few of them. Wow, that's crazy. No, he did all the movies without speak, for what I remember. Charlie Chaplin, yeah. I think he did speak in The Dictator though, if I'm not wrong. Right? Like the end speech.
Keaton created some of the most memorable images of the silent era, and today they're still being seen by millions of people. I think Keaton might appreciate the irony that a technological innovation has created a new medium that is perfect for his work. After all, it was another technological innovation, in the form of synchronized sound, that pushed Keaton's brilliant visual comedy aside in favor of wordplay and musical numbers.
While the music plays, you could dance for days to this lazy craze. Free and easy.
The General, today regarded as Keaton's masterpiece, was a box office disappointment. Conversely, his earliest sound films were some of his biggest hits. Keaton at that point had lost creative control over his movies, and it must have been difficult for him to see audiences preferring a mediocre sound comedy to some of his greatest silent work. Yet time has vindicated Keaton's creative genius. The movies MGM foisted on him have largely fallen into obscurity, while his silent comedy lives on, still being seen by audiences in ways that Keaton could never have imagined.
I think he'd be happy that his work is now getting recognition again. I think he's probably pretty happy about that. I'm assuming that he would be pretty happy about that now. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I never watched silent movies at all, really. I think my mom may have, my dad, but me not at all. Interesting though. The stunts might be interesting to see. Actually, the stunts could be interesting. But yeah. Definitely a legend, and good that people are remembering him. Definitely. Buster Keaton. Other famous movie is Sherlock Jr., a movie that's 45 minutes. Is that even a movie? Anyways, yeah. It makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah. Anyways, I think this is good. Especially from a preservation stance. It is very good that people are interested in his work. That is really helpful. Anyways, like, comment, and subscribe.